We need Julian Assange. And one thing I want to say to you today is, it is not only that he is the victim of torture, it is not only that his life is at stake, it is not only we want to save him from a dreadful injustice, we also want to save him because the world needs Julian Assange as a symbol and fighter for liberty in these times.
At the very top, that was Craig Murray at St. Pancras Church in London back in December of 2020, talking about Julian Assange. Craig Murray, like Julian Assange, is in prison right now. So Craig Murray will not be able to write about the case of Julian Assange when it goes before a 3-panel appeal hearing on Wednesday this week. Which is really a shame because Craig Murray is one of the great journalists of our time. He just doesn't work for The Guardian or the New York Times, because if he did, he wouldn't be a journalist. He's a real journalist, and they didn't like it, and they found a way to put him in jail so he couldn't cover this event. We're going to be talking to the woman that runs the Craig Murray Justice Campaign in just a minute. And by the way, my name is Randy Credico. This is Randy Credico Live on the Fly here on Free Speech, real free speech, progressive radio network. And I'm really thrilled. This is like our 12th week here. And it's been a great week is the hearing on Julian Assange. And I wish I could go there, but I took photos of Julian Assange when I was there for the first half of the extradition hearing last year, and it's proscribed. It's contempt of court. That's why Craig Murray is in court. It's the most bizarre story, by the way, but he's in jail for contempt of court for writing about a trial of one of his friends. So it's the first time in 7 years that law has been used to jail a journalist. It happens to be Craig Murray. So I can't go. I took these photos of Assange. You're not supposed to do it. Ensconced inside this plexiglass bulletproof enclosure in the back of the courtroom, just like if you saw anything to do with the Eichmann trial. Whether it be the movie or the actual footage of the Eichmann trial back in 1960, we're talking about a guy who committed massive war crimes, responsible for the Holocaust, 6 million Jews. It was Eichmann. He was in a glass enclosure. You've seen it. And he's got this stolid face. He has no emotion. He doesn't seem to care. The only difference is that Eichmann had access to his lawyers. When I was there, his lawyers couldn't even talk to him. So, and it's Assange who exposes war crimes and crimes against humanity. And he's being treated worse than the guy who did commit crimes against humanity. So we're going to talk to her. Also, coming up, after we're finished with her, the other day I interviewed one of the writers from Yahoo News who participated in this explosive. We had Michael Isikoff, one of the writers. The other writer is Zach Dorfman, and we interviewed him the other day. We're going to play that interview as well. So stick around. We got two great guests on today. We're going to have Ellen Diel is her name, who runs this operation for Craig Murray. And then after that, we're going to go to a piece of music in between her and Zach Dorfman. And this is from the Stand Up for Assange event on Sunday, or actually Saturday, the 16th in DC. We sang happy birthday because his birthday was the 17th. So we're going to play that. It's a couple of minutes. And then afterwards, stick around because you're going to hear from Zach Dorfman, really an incredible story that shook the world. And we expect it to have a big impact in London during this hearing on the 27th and 28th. Adam Schiff is even like weighing in now because of this story. The story really has legs and really was powerful. So why don't we do that? We're going to take a quick break here. This is when I interviewed Craig Murray in the past, which is like 20 times over the last 5 years. We always intro him with the song by Supertramp. It's called Logical Song. And so we're going to play that. And when we come back, we will have Miss Ellen Diel from the Craig Murray Justice Campaign. So stick around. Thank you.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful. A miracle, oh, it was beautiful, magical. And all the birds in the trees, well, they be singing so happily. Oh, joyfully, oh, playfully, watching me. But then they sent me away to teach me how to be sensible, logical, oh, responsible, practical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable, oh, clinical, oh, intellectual, cynical. There are times when all the world's asleep, the questions run too deep for such a simple mind. Won't you please tell me what?
Yeah, that was a Logical Song by Supertramp. And it's a song over the last 5.5 years that I precede my interview with the great Craig Murray. Craig Murray, of course, is in jail right now. He's done this show at least 20 times, and it's good to hear that tune, even though he's not on. It's the only time today that I've played that tune. I only play it for Craig, that I'm playing it for Ellen Diel. Diel, am I pronouncing it right? She is with the Craig Murray Defense Committee out of the great country of Scotland, although I'm not really happy with your country where you've moved, Ellen. Welcome to the show here, live on the fly on Progressive Radio Network.
Cheers.
Yes. So did I pronounce it right? It is Diel.
You did perfectly.
And you've been living in Scotland for how long?
Like 15-ish years.
15 years. Now, you and I were on a program the other day. It was Craig Murray's birthday. Unfortunately, he was not able to celebrate it with his wife, his kids, or friends. The head of the Craig Murray Defense Committee, you and others. But I hope he got it, and I hope it cheered him up a little bit, the video that he got. So let me ask you first, how did you get involved with this committee here? How long have you known Craig, and what
Interesting. I actually didn't know Craig before all of this came along. I had heard of him and I had read his blog, but I wasn't a personal friend. And a friend of his introduced me and him after Craig said that he might need somebody to coordinate a campaign once he's inside. And that's how I joined the campaign. And I had the great pleasure of spending a couple of months with Craig before he was incarcerated. We were kind of preparing and going over the detail of the case and spending a lot of time even just sitting in the same room and laughing at the same dumb news on our separate screens. So that's been a really valuable and strange experience. And I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with his family and friends and meet all his contacts throughout the last half year now. So that's been really interesting, and I can't wait to see him back outside.
Well, neither can I. even if it's from afar. I wanted to say you got attracted to Craig Murray's case and to Craig Murray by reading his blog. And once you got to know him personally, it's impossible not to love this man. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, and I think he knows it too. He's very hard to dislike, and I think people can only dislike Craig as long as they're not able to sit down with him and have like a conversation, because he's just a very likable guy, somebody with a sharp intellect and a very distinct sense of integrity, but somebody who's perfectly able to disagree with you even on various topics, and still have a respectful relationship to you. He's always going to look at your point of view, and he's always going to be straight about what his point of view is, and then he's going to soften it with his people skills.
He really can. Listen, he could convert the devil into Christianity. That's how charming he is, Craig Murray. And he had immediate effect on me. I first interviewed him back in 2016. I think it was August of 2016. Then I had him on a few times, and then I had him on in December 2016. He had been in the hospital for a full week. We talked about this the other day, having a blood transfusion. I mean, you've been around him. He was in no condition to be going into this prison or any prison, as far as that goes.
Absolutely not. So when I first met Craig, I think in June, he had just come over a very mild cold that had hit the entire family. But Craig spent about 3 weeks trying to recover from what was a matter of days for everybody else in the family. He's got pre-existing health conditions, and actually as part of the court case that was going on, his health was evaluated, and it was submitted that he was neither fit to do community service for medical reasons, nor would his health condition in any way be improved by being in prison, and was likely to deteriorate, given that his health conditions as they are a life impacting factor even on the outside, and within prison you are robbed of any self-responsibility. That's sort of the point. It's very difficult for him to take care of his health, and especially now.
Yes, well, I got to tell you, one would look at him and his productivity and his eloquence in his daily dispatches at the Assange trial. I was there with him a year and a half ago, and I knew he was sick then, but he pushes himself. I mean, in spite of his innate illnesses right now, or whatever, they came on late in life, but in spite of all of that, he was still very productive the last time. And he was, he did this show just before he went into that prison a few months ago. He really defies gravity, Craig Murray, and there's something about him that drives him. What do you think it is?
I think mirth. He's got a little inside voice that is very mirthful, and when Craig is passionate about something, he will spend his entire energy and time doing that. There are things in life that we all struggle to manage, and somebody with health conditions that are so limiting will struggle to do more, but the stuff that he's passionate about doesn't fall into that category. And we all know that when we care about something that is larger than ourselves, we can find more energy than we would for just our own sake. Craig is somebody that really feeds off the energy of doing something that impacts more people than just himself.
Yeah, I really, I couldn't do that. I was healthy. I'm not as healthy now as I was a year and a half ago. And I'm totally amazed by this man's energy in spite of the physical or health problems he's been suffering for at least 5 years, as far as I've known him that long, 5 or 6 years. Like you said, once it's in his head, he's just going to continue. When he was on this show, and does this bewilder you? He was on this show just a week before he entered prison, and he spent the whole time talking about the plight of Julian Assange, and not about his own personal problems with the prison system. Does that bewilder you at all, or is that something you would expect from a guy like Craig Murray?
Not at all. I don't know if there are guys like Craig Murray. I know that there's one, and this specific Craig Murray is uniquely unprecious about how he is viewed. I think to him it's almost embarrassing that there's a Craig Murray Justice campaign, because he'd rather not have his name attached to anything. To him it's about the bigger picture in almost everything that we do, and he is just somebody that is morally allergic to injustice. Now that it affects himself, it's a very strange position, I'm sure, for him to be in. And I think even though Craig throughout his life has been in several difficult and complex situations that required a lot of, I guess, self-confidence, even just to navigate through them, this is a new variation on that theme, and maybe not the worst variation, because we're seeing that there's such broad international support, and from people who have met him all along his way to people who have never met him before, coming out of the woodwork, getting in touch and internationally showing their solidarity. Nobody should be in prison for executing their job, and there's no doubt that Craig is a journalist, and Craig knows this. Now that Scotland has started to re-imprison journalists after almost well over 70 years, because we haven't found a case in 70 years in Scotland of a journalist being imprisoned. Now that that is him, I think the best way for him to navigate through that is to do what he has always done and look at it as a matter of injustice rather than a matter of personal injustice. And I think that's a good way for people who are, made that way, to care about the bigger picture. That's a better way for him to approach the whole issue.
Well, you talk about the way he's able to finesse and walk down these tricky lines. And it all started, I believe, in 2003 or whatever, 2004, when he exposed the torture in Uzbekistan. That probably didn't go well, did not sit well with the authorities, whether it be Tony Blair or Jack Straw and the powers that be, that they have an ambassador there that's supposed to be representing their BS foreign policy. And Craig basically said, hey, to hell with that. And he went public with it. Do you think that's where the problems began for Craig Murray?
I'm not sure. I think that's where the problems became internationally relevant, but a personality structure like Craig Murray is always going to run into trouble. Authenticity upsets those that have nothing invested in authentic anything. And Craig, being as authentic as he is and not being very tolerant of inauthenticity and of lies and of human rights abuses, Craig was always going to run into problems, because the higher you up, especially in the British establishment, you get, the higher the likelihood that you will run into things that are not, well, that require you to yield your moral backbone, and Craig is just not capable of that.
He put conscience in front of career, and because he could have had a nice pension right now if he had just gone with the flow, but he just couldn't live with himself. And he is a great example, a role model for those. There are very few people of his ilk out there, particularly in the foreign service of various big nations, these big countries like US, UK, Australia. They're not used to seeing someone like Craig Murray go off in a different direction and contravene, or whatever the word is, contradict what the official policy is. And that was
very
just
unusual and very difficult. I mean, it puts states rely on closed ranks and on a united front, and as soon as those ranks are broken, you haven't just made enemies for life. You have made enemies that will try and find you wherever you are and whatever you go about next. Whistleblowers are tarnished in their reputation, maybe not to people like you and me, but in the eyes of establishment. Of course, a whistleblower is a fuse that is already lit.
Yes, well, it's a mirror in their face, and they don't want to look at it. That's the problem with these people who put money and power in front of conscience and things of that nature. My mind is a little weak today. I think I've been fasting for 3 days, so we're losing track of time, and the navigational skills are.
Dear.
But let's go this week. This week, it is Monday, the 25th, and on the 27th, Wednesday, the Assange hearing continues. And, you know, one of the big guns going to be there to report on it. And I think that pleases the powers that be very much. And that, of course, is Craig Murray. It almost seems like it was designed to happen because he is going to be missing in action. This is like a football team in the U.S. not having their quarterback or the pitcher and the star pitcher of a baseball team. Craig writes better than anyone that has reported on the Assange hearings and the previous hearings and this one that's coming up. No one can write like Craig and as prolifically as him. Does it seem a little odd or coincidental that this happens right now?
I mean, this is only one instance. At the beginning, when Craig was first sentenced, the judges removed his passport essentially, and at the time he had been called to a Spanish court to give evidence against secret services, US secret services, who had been spying on Assange's legal team. So Craig was asked to give evidence, and the judges both removed his passport, which in Spain, you basically have to be in the court in the country in order to give evidence. So giving remote evidence was a tricky subject. But aside from that, he was meant to go into prison the day before this hearing was supposed to take place in Spain. And it's just, it seemed so arbitrary and so deliberate at the same time that I think there can be no doubt that there is some sort of consideration. And if there isn't, wow, that is some exceptional circumstances that lead to such an exceptional reality. Of course, people are missing him, and it's very difficult for him to follow the Assange case. He does keep asking for updates, but he is pretty convinced that it isn't a coincidence that he is in prison for this specific time.
Well, I am convinced as well, and that was the UC Global, criminal case in Madrid. And Craig, I know, was even their video of me going inside. I'm just a radio host and a comedian that knows nothing about this stuff. Craig Murray was spied on extensively when he visited Julian, and he visited him quite often in 2017. And I've seen the videos of him, like very animated, talking with him inside that conference room. And of course, he would be a great witness because he knows, he's been on the inside of the power structure, so he knows. I mean, it's almost like anything you ask him, he knows. You know what I mean? Any kind of question you ask him about the government foreign policy, he just seems to know and has a great explanation. Now, have you visited Craig Murray recently?
I've seen him in prison, I believe 2 weeks ago. It was really good to see him, but since then there's been quite some changes within the prison. There appears to have been a COVID outbreak, and because Craig is basically kept in the arrivals ward, it appears to have been one of the new arrivals that carried COVID inside. But the policy of the prison in handling COVID and in a COVID outbreak, which had been happening again a couple of months ago when Craig was initially meant to go into prison, so it's back, and there has been lockdown and then complete opening again, and then lockdown the next day after that, which obviously makes sense in absolutely no country or nation on earth. So we're still trying to find out how he's doing. There's been some significant delay in communications. So at the minute, we're kind of in limbo, and given Craig's health conditions, the COVID outbreak in prison on his corridor and his ward is a real and serious concern. So the campaign has contacted the prison governor, the Scottish Justice Secretary. We've been trying to pull out all the stops because Craig's life is not safe. If he's not safe from a cold that knocks him out for 3 weeks, he is much less able to cope with COVID.
Right. So this must cause a lot of alarm or concern with his wife, Nadira. What is she going through? I know you speak to her almost every day. How is her, how is she dealing with this right now? I spoke to her a couple of months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, but on this show. But what is she going through?
I mean, Nadira is incredible. Anybody really who gets into situations like this, You feel like at the beginning that you cannot cope, but at the end of the day, life goes on and the earth is still moving even when everything is falling apart, and people somehow manage. Nadira is exceptional in the way that she brings dignity to how she manages this, and passion. She is a professional woman herself. She is currently involved in filmmaking and is very busy with that. She's obviously busy with being the mum of two sons, one who's very young, under half a year old. So it's,
It's
she's
ve-
doing the best that she can under incredible circumstances, and really, yeah, it's difficult to summarize it. The entire family is in a very difficult position, and nobody who's no matter whose sentence it is always the family that kind of co-serves the sentence with them. So
yeah.
that's where we're at.
Well, all this grief and aggravation, and people out there who don't know how Craig Murray got, we haven't even discussed this. What landed Craig Murray in a maximum security prison in the heart of Edinburgh? For people who don't know, can you, summarize in a nutshell how he got there?
Sure. So Craig had been covering a case that was going on in Scotland at the time, and it was extremely high profile. It was the former First Minister, which is essentially the highest political office in Scotland, Alex Salmond, had been accused by several women of having behaved sexually inappropriate. This was like a year and a half after the Me Too scandals started rising, and it kind of seemed to ride on that wave. And Craig was one of the reporters that went to the court, one of the few people that were let into the court in the first place, and one of the few people that wasn't just going to eat the mainstream coverage of it. There had been a leak that had come from the Crown, from basically the state side of it, leaks what is happening and that Alex Salmond is going to be charged. And after that initial leak, nobody is able to report on it. So Craig wrote a couple of blogs and went to quite some extent to double check that he wasn't identifying anybody, because the court had issued basically a warning saying, make sure that you guys don't identify any of the accusers and make sure that everything is safe. Craig had done that, but apparently, which wasn't quite clear to all of us until this became a high profile case, there is a law that deals with so-called jigsaw identification, and jigsaw identification means that people are meant to be able to identify something from a piece of information that you have put into the public sphere if and only if they take it together with any other pieces of information out there in the public sphere. So essentially, this puts the onus and responsibility for knowing everything that is out in the public sphere and might lead to the identification of people that you might personally not even know into the hands of individual posters. Essentially, that suppresses any sort of coverage. You shouldn't be talking about it. You shouldn't be writing a blog about it. Don't text your ma about it. None of that, because nobody is reasonably able to oversee what information is out anywhere in the public in order to lead to the identification of people you might not have an idea about. It's sort of playing taboo without knowing the word that you're not supposed to name.
Wow, it's really Orwellian, this whole jigsaw thing. It's the
It's
jigsaw.
special.
Jigsaw inside of a conundrum, inside of a riddle, inside of a Rubik's Cube. That's what it looks like to me, because I can't figure it out. But here he is languishing in jail. I mean, this is what, we all have we look at Scotland as, all right, they want their independence. I understand you want to get away from the Brits and all that, because we talked about this the other day, the Scottish Enlightenment, Robert Burns, you have Carlyle, all of these great writers. You think that now it would have gone into this era here in the 21st century, but this is a step backwards in terms of Scottish jurisprudence.
Oh, absolutely. It's such an ill-defined law in such an ill-defined way. And considering that in the Salmond case, the Scottish government was actually reprimanded for the way it had handled the complaints, and that their process was tainted by apparent bias, was the outcome by the judges. So the details of the case are a lot to go into, but I think if you start looking at the headlines and you start realizing that the judiciary in Scotland and the government in Scotland are extremely close in a way that is extremely unusual for Western modern 21st century nations, and that the Scottish government has been reprimanded for how it's handled a complaint against a former First Minister under a law that was exclusively introduced to make that process happen. So a law that was introduced specifically about one First Minister in the past, with then eventually that whole thing coming down. Alex Salmond was not found guilty and so walked free, but obviously with a relatively tarnished reputation. The only thread that was still loose from that case was Craig Murray having covered it. And he was by far not the only person who covered it, nor the one who was most, brought most details to the case. I read pieces from the BBC in which I started to be able to identify people. I haven't been able to identify anybody from
None
Craig's
of those
writing
people are in
yet.
prison?
No, nobody has been charged either. None.
None. Well, that's because, it's their way of classifying what a journalist is. And there's nobody at the BBC who's a better journalist than Craig Murray. That's the funny thing about this. He's the best journalist. There's no one at the BBC or The Guardian who can write as well.
It depends on how you're judging. I mean, in the BBC and in the British establishment, it's important to remember that obedience is more important than quality of writing by a magnitude of 10. So from that perspective, if you define a journalist as somebody who is tied to corporate, interests and is going to be subservient to political interests, yes, Craig Murray is not your man. If you're looking for a journalist who writes independently and does so with thought and integrity, yes, Craig Murray is your man.
Right. Well, it's really a shame what's happening there, and it's a bad precedent. And I just wanted to ask you, Ellen, how do people, as we spoke about in the beginning, it's the Craig Murray Justice Campaign. People can find you at that Twitter account, or is there a website that you want to put out there?
Yeah, we've got the Twitter account, which is C Murray Justice. And then our website is posted there. You can look up Craig Murray Justice on Google and it should be the first result as well.
All right, Craig Murray Justice. And is that the URL on the website? Can you give us the exact website?
It
Craig.
is. I should know this by heart by now, but here we are.
We have a second here. It's all right.
It's craigmurrayjustice.org.uk.
All right, .org.uk. And last week was his birthday, Craig Murray. I was down in DC. I think it's the 15th, right? October 15th. Was that his birthday? Oh, it was the 17th. I saw the 15th. Good, because it was on the 16th that we sang happy birthday to Craig Murray. And he got a standing ovation at our Stand Up for Assange event at the Tavern Inn in DC. Oh. And we're going to go out with that. I know they played it the other day, but we're going to go out with it right now. This is happy birthday to Craig Murray. And thank you so much. Would you please give him our love here at Assange Countdown to Freedom from all of us. All right. And we hope to see him soon back on this show. All right. Thank you, Ellen Diel. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was our pleasure.
I know Craig Murray will not be there. Craig Murray, unfortunately, who John Kiriakou got the award from, the Sam Adams Award. By the way, before I mention all these names, let's talk about Craig Murray for a minute, because we know how fundamentally important he has been for Julian Assange. Those daily dispatches he will not be able to put out on the 27th and the 28th. And we know they don't want him to, so they got him on some trumped up bullshit charge. He's in there, and then today there's a big outbreak at the Edinburgh prison, a big outbreak of COVID. So he's in very bad danger at this point in time. Now, yesterday was his birthday, Craig Murray's birthday. I know Deepa Driver, you're watching this. I know you're recording this, so what we're going to do is a day late happy birthday for Craig Murray. So if you would join us, let's do this for Craig Murray. It's his birthday yesterday, but this is for a tape he's going to get tomorrow. All right, so let's give him a big happy birthday to Craig Murray for all of the great work that he has done. Craig Murray. Let's go, Maestro.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Craig Murray. Happy birthday to you.
He's a great guy, Craig Murray.
Just a few weeks back, one of the most explosive pieces of journalism came out. Stories came out on Julian Assange. You know, I've done this for 5 years. I've done Assange programs, and I got to tell you, all those shows I've done didn't have the impact that this beautiful, explosive Yahoo News piece. And I congratulate them. My friend Michael Isikoff. And our other guest, Zach Dorfman, who joins us from San Francisco. Let me just congratulate you first for this great piece of reportage, Zach.
Well, thank you so much, Randy, and it's great to be with you. It was a great deal of research and reporting that went into the story, and a real team effort.
Well, let me ask you a question. When did you guys, I think I asked Michael a couple of weeks ago when the story first broke. Somebody said it broke like 24 hours later on AOL. Then it came back on Sunday, the following morning at 5 a.m. And then I had this interview with Michael Isikoff, and I said, "When did you? What kicked off? What kindled this this story? The genesis of it? Can you give us a little light on it? Because it's an amazing piece of work."
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I mean, the genesis went back many, many months, and I'd have to check, but I believe it was not even this calendar year. So, I was having a conversation with a former U.S. intelligence official, and this person said to me that there were a lot of things that they were relieved, right? So this person expressed relief to me because I believe this was after the election, right? And what this person said to me was, "Well, I'm very relieved because there were some things that were under discussion, just crazy ideas, during the Trump administration, and we were all very worried about them. And I asked this person, well, like what?" And they said, "Well, I don't really want to get into it." And I said, "Well, no. I mean, what were you worried about? It's important." And they said, "Well, one thing that was a crazy idea had to do with, killing Julian Assange,
Just like that? Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, and so obviously I was taken aback by this. And, we, me, Sean Naylor, and Mike Isikoff, then kind of fanned out and spoke to, other former officials and slowly but surely, confirmed parts of this story about this effort that was kind of driven by Mike Pompeo to look into some very extreme options regarding Assange, particularly the one that got furthest was potentially kidnapping Assange from the Ecuadorian embassy in London. But then there were these other discussions that went even further toward assassination. I should note that, former officials told us that those discussions did not get very far. But nevertheless, the very fact that they were happening at all made, U.S. intelligence community and national security officials, some of them, very, very uncomfortable. And the fact that the kidnapping discussions got much further along the line when you actually have, the CIA director repeatedly advocating for that option at National Security Council meetings in the White House in 2017, that really, really worried people.
Well, how does that work? So he comes up with the idea, and we'll play this in a second. He comes up with the idea. He floats it around at this table with all these other people in the National Security Council, and he just comes up with it. What, did they rebuff him, or did they take it into consideration? We're talking about Pompeo, and we're talking about the kidnapping of Julian Assange, and also talk about the predicate. If they kidnapped him, what could they do with him at that point?
No, I mean, those are all great questions. I should add the caveat that we don't know whether he generated the idea or whether somebody gave it to him as an option, and he was simply enamored with it enough to actually take it seriously, whereas other folks probably wouldn't have to the same extent. According to our reporting, he took the idea downtown, to National Security Council meetings, restricted principles committee meetings, what they're called, when you have, heads of U.S. government agencies dealing with national security sitting there, and, repeatedly advocated for this. And, again, according to our reporting, this made some folks very uncomfortable, particularly National Security Council lawyers like John Eisenberg, who was the top NSC lawyer at the time. I mean, they were very, very concerned about the legality of doing something like this. And we can get into that in detail about why they were concerned about the potential illegality of that, because there's multiple potential points where you cross that line. You mentioned another really important point, which was if you take Assange, if you break into the Ecuadorian embassy and you drag him out, what are you going to do with him? Now, I mean, one kind of softer version of the proposal was maybe we'd get the assent of the British, we turn him over to the British, and then we would try to extradite him. Okay, well, in that case, you're still kidnapping him from the Ecuadorian embassy, right? So you're violating the sovereign territory of Ecuador by bursting into the embassy. But there were more extreme versions of this proposal that was actually like what was known as a rendition, where you throw him into a car, you get him on a plane, and then you'd need to take him somewhere. And this really worried people in the administration and the National Security Council, because people said to themselves, "What are we going to do? We're going to go back to black sites, like during the War on Terror. We're going to put them in a facility somewhere, in a third country, and until there are charges." Because again, important point, these discussions were ongoing months and months and months before Assange was actually indicted.
Yes,
you're talking about nabbing a guy who's actually not even subject to federal legal charges.
Well, we're talking about, this came out. In fact, I want to play this. This is a key point. I think at this point he was able to find a way, Pompeo, to legally lay the groundwork. This is a speech that he gave, I think, in April of 2000. This is just a clip of it. This is Pompeo when he really blew his lid and he looked crazy up there talking. But this is him speaking in front of the CIA, I believe. You can tell me afterwards, maybe the National Press Club. Could you play that clip, Reggie?
It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is. A non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia. We know this because Assange and his ilk make common cause with dictators today. Yes, they try unsuccessfully to cloak themselves and their actions in the language of liberty and privacy, but in reality, they champion nothing but their own celebrity. Their currency is clickbait, their moral compass non-existent, their mission, personal self-aggrandizement through destruction of Western values.
He really seemed like he was out of breath as he was talking there. Maybe he just got out of a buffet with MBS. I don't know. Had too many, garbanzo beans and shawarma with MBS. But it was an open buffet, all you can hold down for 99 cents, as we used to say in Vegas. But let me just ask you, so he says that. Now, this is in wake of the revelations of, and this is in your article, of Vault 7. The disclosures of Vault 7. That's what really rankled him. Am I correct?
You're entirely correct. So, that's important. That's an important thing to frame the story, which is that, starting in March 2017, you had WikiLeaks begin a series of releases that it called Vault 7, which, was a leak of very, very sensitive CIA hacking tools. And WikiLeaks was publishing descriptions mostly of these tools. And these are from this kind of elite, very, very secretive CIA hacking unit. And Pompeo had just taken over as CIA director, and it was, it was something that he took very, very personally, according to our reporting. But nevertheless, the speech in April 2017 was his first public speech, and it surprised a lot of observers that he spent his first public speech not talking about China or Russia or transnational Islamist terrorism, but WikiLeaks. And, while it was kind of a head scratcher for a lot of folks at the time, what we discovered over the course of our reporting was that, in fact, there was great significance to it, because he was in essence kind of declaring war on WikiLeaks. He was hinting publicly at a policy shift that would have significant ramifications for WikiLeaks and the way the U.S. government was viewing it.
It's the first time I've heard the word WikiLeaks come out of anyone is living in Washington and working there in Congress, and that was Adam Schiff. You had Adam Schiff on the other day, I think yesterday even. So what did he say he was going to do, and what is the significance of that?
Well, Congressman Schiff, who is the head of the House Intelligence Committee, as you mentioned, was interviewed yesterday by Mike Isikoff, and Mike asked him if he was aware of the story and what, if anything, he had done about the allegations contained within it. And Schiff pretty bluntly said, "Yeah, I read the story, and we sent a formal request for information from the U.S. intelligence agencies," and it seems clear he was talking about CIA and DNI, acronym soup sometimes, and requesting information about this stuff. And he told Mike Isikoff that he had not been briefed about this stuff when it was under consideration, according to our reporting, and that tracks completely with our understanding, which was that these discussions were going on at very high levels within the Trump administration, national security bureaucracy, and there was some unofficial word about some of these things that was trickling down to some folks in Congress, but there was no formal briefing on it. So, I think Schiff is trying to get to the bottom of, was the Trump administration, seriously considering, kidnapping Assange, and were they having discussions about killing him? Because, I think, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees arose in the 1970s from the ashes of, the Church and Pike committees, right, which were devoted toward ensuring congressional oversight over CIA activities, during a time when CIA and NSA were doing things that were clearly illegal. Right. And some of those included assassination plots, right? And so, this is squarely within the oversight and accountability function of Schiff's committee. So obviously we're going to keep a very close eye on that and hope that we can get some more public information about it, because, one of the issues is that, sometimes the committees will say we're looking into it, and then it disappears into a black hole, and that critical accountability is never kind of given the sunlight that it deserves.
Yeah, back then in the 70s, I think Barr was, at the time, was the CIA counsel, William Barr. Now, we played that clip of Pompeo, and so this kind of set the groundwork. I want to go back to that for them to find a legal way, if in case they did kidnap him,
to charge him, right? Because they had no charges against him. They had to do something here. I think it was only Kamala Harris and Wyden from Oregon who were opposed to designating them as a non-state hostile intelligence service. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I would be happy to, and that is all very precise, Randy. So as part of this speech, then CIA Director Pompeo declared them this non-state hostile intelligence service, which, again, was something that people thought, oh, that's kind of strange. That's a little bit odd. What they didn't, what wasn't quite grasped at the time was that was a significant policy shift. And this idea was that if you designated them internally within CIA as a non-state hostile intelligence service, that would allow for a much greater breadth of action or activity against WikiLeaks, because CIA has these powers that are known as kind of offensive counterintelligence authorities, right? And what those normally deal with is kind of covert action-like activities that you perform against other spy services, like the FSB in Russia or the MSF in China, or even certain kinds of non-state actors like Hezbollah or Al Qaeda. But what was quite novel, and I think some folks think is very, very worrying, is that, what Pompeo was saying, in essence, was we are going to group WikiLeaks in with the Chinese intelligence services or with, the Iranian-sponsored terrorist group Hezbollah. And because of that, because we've now done that, we can now act in a much more aggressive fashion against them. Now, it's important to caveat that by saying that many folks that we spoke with said, look, part of the issue here was that, it's one thing to try to take down their online infrastructure once you've declared them a non-state hostile intelligence service. I mean, let's hold to the side whether that designation is actually appropriate for WikiLeaks. But that's clearly within the kind of normal boundaries of what offensive counterintelligence is. What is very boundary pushing, even if you were talking about the Chinese intelligence services, even if you were talking about the Iranian intelligence services, would be this idea that you can then kidnap their operatives or even assassinate their operatives. And so, this was for some folks, a very legally dubious path that CIA under Pompeo was beginning to go down. And so, there were kind of concerns heaped atop concerns there.
Yeah, we're running out of time here. It's gone by so quickly. He accelerated the spying operation through UC Global. I'm sure he was in support of it, and they did all sorts of stuff. I was in that embassy 3 times, and I was talking about dogs and talking about. The map of China, where Shanghai was, and the seas, and we were talking about cuisine. We never, because I don't know. I'm not like a guy. I'm not a a junkie when it comes to all of these things, coding and the internet. I still have an AOL account, so. When I hear guys like William Binney talk about tap lines, I'm thinking of people like Ruby Keeler and Jimmy Durante tap dancing in 42nd Street. So I don't know. But, I'm there talking with them, and I must tell you that they even got me on UC Global got me talking to him about nothing. That's on there. So they got the lawyers. They even got they stole the diapers of his partner and mother of his 2 kids, Stella Morris, and, some outrageous behavior by them. I don't understand why one guy, they're so fearful of one guy. It just it boggles my mind. What did you get a lot of heat? You got a minute left. Did you get a lot of heat from people within the intelligence community for releasing this explosive expose? I
think some folks were supportive in what they saw as extreme overreach by Director Pompeo. According to the former officials we spoke with, other folks were less pleased by it. That's there's an old saying about journalism, which is that if you die and nobody shows up at your funeral, you are a successful reporter. And, you know, I think some people think, oh, you know, this reporting is going to help Assange. I mean, it's not my job to help or hurt Assange. It's my job to report truthfully on things that actually occurred. And this was something that was eminently newsworthy and quite worrying to a lot of people within the IC and the national security world. And so, you know, I feel secure in that, even though I know that when you publish stories like that, you're going to ruffle some feathers.
Well, it's the old-fashioned way: who, what, when, where, why. You did all of that. It wasn't an advocacy piece. All you did was report on the story. You know, there's a lot of us out there that do advocacy stuff, but this was just straight reporting. And I think you guys did a tremendous job. I've learned a lot. I think it educated a lot of people and worried a lot of other people. We'll see what the impact will be on the 27th and 28th when it goes to the appeal hearing by the Biden administration. Zach, people can follow you. Zach S. Dorfman on Twitter. Zach S. Dorfman on Twitter. I'm not going to mix you up with Alan Dorfman from the Teamsters. You are Zach S. Dorfman. And
I love it that you know that reference. I love it that you know that reference.
Well, I'm an old guy, man. I'm an old guy. I got it long in the tooth here. Anyway, so you guys keep up the good work. You'll come back, right?
Be delighted.
I mean, I think you got more up your sleeve, and we'll be looking for it. And you guys, this was Pulitzer Prize worthy. Thank you. At least Polk Prize. I think Pulitzer. Thank you, Zach, and give my best to Naylor and my dear friend Michael Isikoff. Zach
Thank you
Dorfman.
So much,
thank you very much.